Welcome back. Staffing up. President-elect Donald Trump has hit the ground running and building his second administration. Since his win last week, Trump has named a slew of prominent Republicans to high posts including Secretaries of State, Defense, Homeland Security, and Attorney General, among others. We'll take a look at who those people are, the thinking behind the decisions, and the controversy and backlash some of them are facing. We'll be taking a look at those stories and more today, November 14th, 2024. From Ishan Media, this is the Ishan S. Show, a podcast about the interesting and ever-changing world of American politics, with me, your host, Ishan. Thanks for joining us. So look, for any president or any executive for that matter, they can only succeed if they have a team behind them that is ready, willing, and able to carry out their agenda. If it were up to just one president, nothing would ever get done. They need a lot of people to specialize in a lot of things to do what it is that the president would like. That's why the Founding Fathers created provisions for this thing called a cabinet. The cabinet is the group of advisors to the president who are tasked with implementing the president's agenda. They are nominated by the president and then usually confirmed by the Senate to hold their positions. Now, why do I say usually? I'll explain that in a bit. But you may have heard of some of these types of cabinet posts: Secretary of Defense, tasked with military policy; Secretary of Agriculture, tasked with making sure farms and your food are healthy and safe. But there are also some roles that you may not be as familiar with, like Chief of Staff to the President or Director of National Intelligence. That's to say that this vast bureaucracy is led by this team of people who all report to and serve at the pleasure of the president, which means that if the president wants to can them, they're out. So just like at the start of any administration, President Trump is now in the process of shaping his cabinet of advisors. As of the writing of this script, we have roughly 10 or 11 notable nominations, so we'll take a look at some of those men and women. We'll do that all in just a sec, but before I do actually start talking about some of the nominees that are going to make up the next Trump cabinet, which I know some of them will get confirmed, I want to just start with sharing a few quick numbers and facts. Take them how you will. The turnover rate during the first Trump administration for cabinet secretaries is put at around 85 to 90%. Staggering. In numeric terms, 13 out of the 23 cabinet-level positions were replaced, which means that there was a lot of chaos going on with the 13 departments and department heads, whatever those people may be at a given time. It's usually that people were fired in the Trump administration. There were the very few exceptions where people just resigned on their own terms. But usually it never ended well. If you were in the Trump administration in that first term, you were likely to get fired from your job pretty quickly. And for me, as someone who learned about politics during the Trump administration, where I got to see a lot of politics in action and understand how, the federal bureaucracy works, how presidential administrations operate, I was a little surprised when the Biden administration, when they came in, they just lost a handful of cabinet-level officials, mainly because those people just wanted to retire or they got other job opportunities. I was not used to something that stable or that calm. Like, the turnover rate in the Biden administration, I could count on my fingers how many of those people left. But that's just to say that the first Trump administration was incredibly chaotic. This team of his could not reliably tell people that they'd have jobs for the entirety of the term. And Trump usually was not getting along with the people that he was hiring. And he came in as this chic businessman with all this great experience. But one of the big things about being a CEO or being a businessman is that you know how to hire people. And he didn't seem to hire a bunch of people he liked. A staggering 40 out of 44 of his previous cabinet-level officials refused to endorse him in this past election. Not a lot of outlets will bring these pieces of data up, not because they don't want to, it's just not something people think about, but I believe that stating the facts is pretty important. It's also important to give context. Every Trump hire right now should know about that turnover rate because, as is with things with Donald Trump, things don't usually change, and neither do his habits and practices. He will be as he will still have the same views, he will still have the same philosophy, he will still have the same issues with people, even if this time he's hiring a bunch of loyalists, because that's his plan. Going into this next administration, his plan is to hire loyalist after loyalist to positions, people that will not question him, people that will not challenge him. And that's not me being biased. That is literally what he says he wants to do. That is his philosophy. And that, he is the president-elect and he has the right to his governing philosophy. The issue that he and many experts say that was in the Trump administration the first time around that caused a lot of tension was that Trump usually had people that were challenging his notions, his beliefs. And so he did not like that and he would just fire them. So, going in, we're going to now see a different grouping of people, let's say. So why don't we meet this team, shall we? And I'll start with his first appointment and probably the most important pick, which is Susie Wiles as Chief of Staff. I'm sure I've explained it on the show before, but the Chief of Staff is effectively the president's number 2 on all matters. They usually are the key advisor on just about everything, and they hold incredible influence over the president's agenda and goals. They are usually lauded as the guard dog of the president. Like, you have to go through the Chief of Staff to get to the president. So who is Susie Wiles, and why is she getting this all-important post? Well, she was pretty instrumental in lifting the third Trump campaign off the ground. Her very no-nonsense approach to running things is something that Trump admires, and she is arguably the reason Trump won this time. She ran a very disciplined ship. I think the thing to know about Susie Wiles is she'll help run an entire federal government, so I think the thing to appreciate about her is her management style. One of the reported conditions she had for Trump was that this administration wouldn't be a, quote, repeat clown show of the first term. It's a very direct nod to her attitude towards things. Like, she doesn't like chaos. She likes it to be simple. She likes it to be, normal. But also, come on, Susie. If calm is what you're looking for, the Trump White House will never be the place to look at. Notably, she will also be the first woman to hold this role, so she is breaking barriers there. But then next up is Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. Okay, so this was not as unpredictable as the list is going to get. Rubio is currently a U.S. Senator from the state of Florida. You might know him from when he ran for president in 2016 against then-candidate Trump. And since his failed presidential run, Rubio has mended his relationship with the president-elect and was even in the top 3 to beat Trump's running mate this past July. That was until J.D. Vance ultimately beat him out for the job. Now, of all the picks that I will talk about, that we have seen come from, Trump, Rubio has received the most universal praise from both Republicans and Democrats. I mean, there was this one Senator John Fetterman, I've talked about him, he's from Pennsylvania. He said he's going to happily support the Rubio nomination. And that's mainly because Rubio is uniquely qualified for this role. He very much specializes in foreign policy and intelligence work. He is incredibly hawkish when it comes to China. He makes these views heard. Doesn't matter if you agree with him on the policy, it's just that he is well informed and he makes his opinions based on what he is receiving. He is not a complete stranger to the field of foreign policy, and I keep emphasizing this issue of experience. You're going to learn very quickly why Rubio is seen as this great pick, because not great pick maybe in terms of policy, that's for you to decide, but like great pick in the sense of qualification. When we heard about the Rubio pick, I'm sure it relaxed a few people given all the people Trump could have picked to this role, especially when it comes to issues of Russia and Ukraine. There was a huge concern that Trump was going to just pick someone that was going to throw Ukraine under the bus. And who knows, that could still be the plan. But Rubio is the most important establishment and probably the most establishment pick we're going to get. But Rubio isn't even that establishment of a pick himself. He's deferred to the populist wing of the GOP more than the traditional, but as more and more isolationist right-wing people enter the mix, he's considered relatively more establishment. An example of him shifting and trying to change his pedigree a little to fit the Trump mold was when there was that Ukraine-Taiwan bill. I covered it on this show, I'm pretty sure. It was the big foreign policy package from the Biden administration. Now, a traditional Republican would look at that and see a lot of military spending, a lot of this, a lot of that, and would say it's great. Specifically, billions of dollars to Ukraine to support them. But Rubio was a part of the big group of Republicans that voted against this bill, even though it gave Ukraine a lot of funding. It supported Israel. It supported Taiwan. It was a lot of things that Republicans generally like. However, Rubio voted against it, and I think that was to curry favor. You had to curry favor from the Trump wing. But yeah, that is Marco Rubio. He is going to be the nominee for Secretary of State and very likely the next Secretary of State because he seems to have the votes. All right, we got Rubio, we got Wiles, took care of the normal ones, and I really mean it. The rest of this episode is going to be a very hectic group of people. I won't even try to preface them. All I'll say is that Trump started with Rubio and then announced more and more characters one by one. And the normalcy index definitely declined after Rubio. So I'll conclude with the most bombastic of choices at the end. But I'll work my way down from least to most, okay? Let's try this. So Elise Stefanik is probably the most normal person out of this next grouping of people in the sense of being in mainstream politics and not tied to the MAGA groupthink. She is definitely there with the MAGAs. She is very much populist. She's very much with the Trump side, but she has been nominated to be ambassador to the United Nations. It's a pretty nice foreign policy portfolio that she could get, I'd say. You might recall that Nikki Haley was also given this role, and it gave her some nice foreign policy chops that she was able to use on the campaign trail when she ran for president. Stefanik's name came up in one of the very first stories I covered here on the show, which was about the ouster of Liz Cheney from the House Republican leadership. After Liz Cheney was ousted, Stefanik quickly jumped in and took that number 3 spot until this appointment. So she's been in the House for, I think, since 2016. She was a never Trump Republican at first, but then she very much switched gears and fully embraced Trump as she began to read the tea leaves, I guess. But until this appointment, she served in the House, and since 2021, she's been the House GOP conference chair, the number 3 House Republican. I really thought that she wouldn't want to leave that. I thought she would want to be speaker one day. She really has struck me as that type, but I guess she has other goals and ambitions, which good for her, I guess. Going to the UN, Stefanik is known for her outspoken support of Israel, and she's gained national attention. Specifically, it came from when she was questioning the presidents of Ivy League presidents about anti-Semitism on their campuses. The questioning went viral, and actually as a result, I mean, maybe you could say as a result, I don't know, but after those hearings, 2 of those presidents ultimately resigned from their posts. Sources are saying that that questioning, that testimony, that whatever, that hearing was probably the moment that sold Trump on making Stefanik as his UN ambassador. All right, next up for this candidate so this is going to be Trump's candidate for Secretary of Homeland Security. And Trump plans on nominating South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. Noem is no stranger to the show. I have covered her on numerous occasions before. If I'm not wrong, I even mentioned her as a rising star in a very early episode of the Ishana show. You can go back and find it. I don't know where it is. But this is true. She has seen her star power skyrocket exponentially since becoming the governor of South Dakota. She's tapped into the culture war in the MAGA base, and Trump does seem to really love her. She was supposedly on Trump's radar to be his running mate earlier this year, but ultimately things soured when she inexplicably confessed in her own memoir to shooting her puppy and goat many years ago. Rest in peace, Cricket. Here's a little clip of, I don't even know what.
I guess I was just wondering if you killed that dog.
What are you talking about?
Did you kill the dog?
Oh my gosh, you're crazy.
When it comes to experience in the role, I don't know what to say. As governor of South Dakota, she has experience managing a state workforce, but it is a state workforce of approximately 8,000 people, which is really nothing compared to the 220 employee workforce at DHS. Mind you, she is going to oversee a lot of agencies like FEMA and TSA and Secret Service for that matter, but most notably, she is going to be the chief officer when it comes to matters of immigration. Alongside Stephen Miller and Tom Homan, two more Trump appointees, Noem is going to lead Trump's plans of mass deportations, the ones we talked about in yesterday's episode. I don't know how much of that is going to rest on Noem, but hey, she will be involved in the process. She also has a background in Washington from when she served in the House of Representatives as South Dakota's lone and sole representative. She'll be expected to testify in front of committees, especially for being an immigration chief. I know it's going to happen, and I'm sure she's going to be able to do that. Now, while she doesn't necessarily have that level of executive experience, she's incredibly competent and she's a hard worker. A lot of people respect her for her policy-focused approach, so even if she's not specialized in this field of DHS, it's not like she can't learn, and it's not like I don't think she's going to be able to succeed in the role for what she was picked. I think she definitely has the skills to actually adapt and learn how to do the job. All right, now let's talk about Department of Defense. For many presidential terms now, presidents have selected, generally speaking, generals or career civil servants in the Pentagon to lead the Department of Defense. It makes sense. You want someone with that type of experience. DoD is a department that consists of upwards of 2 million employees. The fair expectation is that the Secretary of Defense is someone with that kind of executive management skill and experience in the department. So you'd understand why I audibly shouted, "What?" when I saw that Fox and Friends co-host Pete Hegseth was announced as Trump's Secretary of Defense. I mean, the other nominees I can wrap my head around. But, like, Hegseth for Secretary of Defense? It's just weird to me. But, so, I will acknowledge, however. I mean, as weird as it is to me, I will acknowledge to Hegseth's credit that he's not only a Fox News host, he's had a pretty impressive record in the military, and he's been a long commentator on matters of Pentagon policy. He's been very against the woke stuff that he alleges happening in the Department of Defense. Sure. But nothing steals from the fact that Pete Hegseth has zero executive management experience. He hasn't managed 100 people or had a government experience before, let alone managing 2 million people and $800 billion of the taxpayers' money. He's also just not known by people. Like when some senators were asked about Hegseth, they just asked who? I don't know what the confirmation process for him is going to look like, but allegedly I can tell you that the decision to nominate Hegseth was a super last-minute one because Trump wanted to rock the so-called establishment. He decided on Hegseth Monday night and announced him Tuesday evening. Just an indication of how rapidly things unfolded for Hegseth. I haven't even gotten into his views on a whole host of topics or Trump's plans to potentially purge the military, but I'm sure we will talk about that in an upcoming episode. I promise. It's just really weird to think that he's going to quit Fox News to now become the CEO of the largest part of the federal government. Are they still hiring? Because I'll take a job if qualifications don't matter. Okay, now we're crawling into the rabbit hole. So, after Trump decided that Pete Hegseth was a good fit for Secretary of Defense, this is going to be a new office that he's creating. It's going to be within the Executive Office of the President, and that is going to be creating the Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge. Yes, like Dogecoin. Can you take a wild guess about who will be taking on this new initiative? 10 points for guessing Elon Musk. But he also has a co-director or co-leader or whatever it is, Vivek Ramaswamy. Yep, the one I called annoying many months ago when he ran for president. There isn't much to say about these gentlemen. I think this was probably the least surprising after the Rubio pick. I only say that because Elon talked about the Department of Government Efficiency on the campaign trail all the time. And I'm not really sure where Trump would have even put Vivek Ramaswamy, but hey, he did say that he would take his name out of consideration for that open Senate seat in Ohio. So, you know, he will have a job now, I guess. Interestingly, I will point out DOGE, or the Department of Government Efficiency, a department that will be tasked with cutting unnecessary costs and making the government more efficient, will be run by two people. Two people doing the job of one. Very efficient. Splendid. Next on this list, we have Tulsi Gabbard. So Gabbard used to be a Democrat congresswoman from Hawaii, and she even ran for president to be the Democratic nominee to run against Donald Trump in 2020. She has made an incredibly sharp shift over the past 4 years, completely embracing the hard right and the isolationist wing of the Republican Party. She has made a lot of friends and people like Tucker Carlson, among others, and she was also, on Fox News. She was a regular. She's railed against the Democrats and the Biden administration. She's accused them of spying on her. She's leveled all sorts of things against them. So yeah, she was tapped to be Director of National Intelligence, obviously. This position is responsible for overseeing the entire intelligence community, the entire intelligence gathering apparatus of the United States. So these are the people that are keeping you safe at night. Gabbard, while a former combat veteran, has no history in intel or intel operations and experience in general. Notice a pattern with all these appointments? But she also has a really choppy record and allegations when it comes to matters of foreign policy, specifically as it pertains to Russia and Syria. I'm not going to say that these are true, and I'm not going to even suggest that there is a mild level of truth to any of them. But they are allegations that are thrown out there, and I'll leave it to Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris to tell you what those allegations are.
Coming from someone who has been an apologist for an individual, Assad, who has murdered the people of his country like cockroaches. She who has embraced and been an apologist for him in a way that she refuses to call him a war criminal. I can only take what she says in her opinion so seriously.
I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far.
But it's not just these two Democrats either. Even former Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney made his concerns known after the invasion of Ukraine, where after Putin invaded Ukraine, and you will remember I covered this on the show, and I might have even brought it up. I don't remember. It was 2 years ago now, but like 3 years actually. That's crazy. But anyway, when Putin made that decision, Gabbard was very quick to tweet that Putin was the real victim in all of this because NATO was expanding and Putin felt threatened. So don't get mad at Putin because he feels threatened. Like, that was her reasoning. And she tweeted that. So Mitt Romney was very concerned about this. And so he tweeted, quote, Tulsi Gabbard is parroting false Russian propaganda. Her treasonous lies may well cost lives, end quote. That's a pretty steep allegation. Since running for president and facing all of this type of criticism, Gabbard has left the Democratic Party and become a Republican, and she is facing quite a bit of backlash on Capitol Hill as lawmakers raise alarm about her questionable background. But I will say this, Gabbard is an incredibly intelligent political operator. She is a grifter in the truest sense, and so I will give her that. She is a capable politician, and she has a future beyond just being Trump's DNI. I think she has these, I don't know how to describe it. Like, you can tell just from even the way I talk, I'm not the biggest fan of Tulsi Gabbard, but like, she does have this really niche political skill that I don't see anyone else really have in politics. And so I will give her that credit. I also think that she's smart enough to be able to, just like Kristi Noem, learn how to operate. It's just when there are all these allegations against her, I don't know how trusting the intelligence community may be with this. I don't know. I don't work in intelligence, so I'm not going to comment too much about that. But that is what I'm hearing people say as well. It is a concern that people have. And, there is one thing we have in common, which is that she also did host a podcast where, just like me, she also stopped making episodes for times on end. Yeah, so I guess we're similar like that. Anyway, I will conclude with probably the most shocking and surprising pick. Like I said, what I promised, the most bombastic of the picks. And that one is stirring the most waves, and that is the selection of Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. Loyal listeners of this show know Matt Gaetz from when he when he stirred a lot of chaos last October. And I always think about it because this man single-handedly did so much. But he was the one who led the effort to oust now former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, and of course initiated that really chaotic time for the House GOP caucus, which resulted in, at the end, Mike Johnson becoming Speaker. I remember when I saw the news of Trump picking Matt Gaetz, I really had to check on multiple sources because I was convinced that it was some sort of joke. That Gaetz, because Gaetz is, I guess this is also why he was picked, but it's also why I was a little shocked. Gaetz is the most Trumpy member of the House GOP. He's known for being an ardent supporter of the president-elect and one of his biggest fans. But he's also been described as incredibly obnoxious by his House colleagues. I was just listening to a CNN panelist who was talking about how no one on Capitol Hill likes Matt Gaetz, and it's mainly just because of his behavior and the way he conducts himself. He made quite a few enemies after what he did to Kevin McCarthy, and he's also called for doing other interesting things like defunding a few key government agencies like the FBI and the Department of Justice, the departments that he does have to now potentially lead. Here's a clip of him making that direct call.
Back on our side, or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them, if they do not come to heel.
But that's not the only thing Gaetz was also known for. He was also the subject of an investigation by the agency hopes to lead. This was for engaging in improper relations with a 17-year-old. I won't go into specifics because this is still a family-friendly show, but CNN, Fox News, all the news networks, newspapers, and everyone really, they covered this extensively, so you can find that information on your own. And while that case has since been closed, and his friend went to prison, Gaetz was, as a result, the subject of an investigation by the House Ethics Committee examining the whole ordeal. They were actually just about to release their findings when, bloop, Gaetz resigned from the House to focus on his confirmation process. Because Gaetz is no longer a member of the House of Representatives, that investigation has been ceased. Now, the report that they were going to release, it will not be released, and that's because Gaetz is no longer a member of the House, and so the House Ethics Committee no longer has to be concerned with this. There is already backlash, and given the Republican majority, Gaetz can't really afford to lose a lot of votes. But we've already gotten clear no's from Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, but Senator Richard Blumenthal just today, he told some news outlets that there are approximately 10 Republicans that are not going to vote for Matt Gaetz. So when his nomination really does come to the Senate, I don't really know what to expect. And that's mainly because everyone else is equally shocked and surprised. Reportedly, there were audible gasps when people heard about Matt Gaetz being the pick. So why would Trump pick someone like this to be his top law enforcement officer? Well, it's simple. Trump ran on retribution and going after those who wronged him. Gates has been a day one diehard supporter, and he will not question Trump on any of these crusades. Gates will plainly carry out whatever it is Trump asks him to do, which is to say his agenda of retribution. I'm really skeptical about Gates' chances, and especially what we're hearing now that 10 Republican lawmakers don't want him to be the Attorney General. I don't have a lot of faith in his ability to succeed, and maybe Gates was picked as a joke so that it could turn away from like all the other interesting candidates. But maybe I don't know. I don't know what kind of reality Matt Gaetz lives in, but maybe he shouldn't have quit the job he had. You know, maybe he shouldn't. Because I don't have a lot of confidence in his ability to become the next Attorney General. So you saw the list got more and more bombastic and surprising. I don't think there really is much in the way of saying that the Trump administration will be calm or quiet any different from the last one. If not, it may actually be worse, because they were saying that unlike last time where Trump hired a bunch of people that might have gone against him, this time he's hiring a bunch of loyalists that are going to go against each other. Don't forget that Trump is not going to run for president in 4 years. No matter how much he jokes about it, he will not run for president in 4 years. And so all of these people he's picking, think about it, this dream team, Republican dream team, really, of, you know, people like Kristi Noem, people like Marco Rubio, Matt Gaetz, all of these people have presidential ambitions. They have no interest in just being Department of Homeland Security Secretary or something. Like, they have ambition. And I think Trump is really trying to bring in a bunch of people that are going to be opponents in a few years. And it's going to be quite interesting to watch that happen. I know Trump really wants J.D. Vance to take on the mantle, but there's no way that these people are not going to run against each other in a few years. It's going to happen. And the way Republican politics goes, they end up becoming really nasty to each other. So I'm really excited for the entertaining road down ahead, because this is going to be a sight to watch. It definitely will not be calm. It definitely won't be, especially with this cast of characters and more to come. There are talks that Trump may even try to bypass the Senate confirmation and appoint his entire cabinet as recess appointments, which would completely negate the power or purpose of the U.S. Senate. So who knows? We may have an Attorney General Matt Gaetz and a Director Gabbard without any opposition or scrutiny. Now, if you want to keep track of who's in, who's out, who's, whatever for the next 4 years, you can check out the SeanSShow.com, where I will have a new page up, which is just tracking the Trump administration. And we're going to see Trump's cabinet posts, who he's appointing, and you'll get updated to see who makes it through, who sticks around, who will replace them later on. Quite the lineup. But yeah, so stick around, keep following us, keep doing all your work. We'll see you back. We'll see you tomorrow. After the 2024 election, one thing is crystal clear. American politics is on a course for change. The next 4 years of the Trump presidency is going to be politicians everywhere in both parties jockeying for spots as leaders and rising stars in their parties and setting themselves up for 2028 and beyond. This is a transitionary period, since Trump will now officially hand the baton over to someone else in 4 years, and Democrats will be working on finding a new leader and redefining themselves after historic defeats. We'll still be here at the Sean S. Show to cover it all, so stick around. Follow us on social media, check out the SeanSShow.com, subscribe to the Political News blog, and as always, follow us on Spotify and subscribe to the Sean S. Show's channel if you're listening to this on YouTube. Until next time, take a little time to enjoy the interesting and ever-changing world of American politics. We'll see you next time.